Families across the U.S. will see hundreds of extra dollars in their bank accounts tomorrow as the IRS begins to send out monthly child tax credit payments. It's an expansion of a tax credit that's been around since the 90s, and it was included in the sweeping stimulus package President Biden passed in March. The program increases the amount of the tax credit for parents and guardians up to $3,600 a year per child and sends out up to $300 each every month through December. Families will get the rest when they file their 2021 tax returns. That's next spring. Credits are expected to cut child poverty in half in this country, according to an analysis from Columbia University. But as of now, they will not last. The stimulus package only put them in place for this year, and Congress would have to pass another bill to keep them going. A recent proposal from President Biden, a sweeping package focused on things like child care, education, expansion of Medicare, are including a provision that would do just that.
That human infrastructure is as essential as our physical infrastructure. It can help us create more good jobs, ease the burden on working families, and strengthen our economy, strengthen in the long run.
But it's unclear what will survive ongoing negotiations in Congress, where Democrats unveiled a new $3.5 trillion proposal today, the details of which are still being finalized. Some of the more moderate Democrats are pushing for a simpler, more bare-bones infrastructure deal instead. So how likely are we to see these so-called human infrastructure plans become law? Joined now by Congresswoman Lori Trahan, who represents Massachusetts' 3rd District. Congresswoman, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to see you, Jim. Thank you.
So my understanding is an extension of this tax credit directed at parents is in this multi-trillion-dollar bill, but a much more transformative thing for parents, universal child care, which would cap a family's payments at 7% of their income for child care. I'm not clear whether that is or is not in the plan. Is it?
Well, we're certainly hoping that it is. I mean, I think right now what we're seeing is a top line agreement on the budget resolution that was announced last night. It's at the right scale to meet the moment that we're in as we work to respond to and recover from COVID-19. And it does have these investments in human infrastructure that you described. I mean, certainly childcare is a big part of that, and making sure that the 2 million moms who are on the sidelines not being able to go back to work because their childcare center isn't there for them or can't, conform to those work hours is a big piece of that. But we're also hopeful the paid family and medical leave is going to be part of this package, making sure that we have universal pre-K for all 3 and 4-year-olds, certainly free community college. I mean, this is about investing in our workforce, investing in our economy, making sure it's more inclusive so that we do win the 21st century and that we do reclaim our global leadership role.
Are you a little nervous that the public and you as a member of Congress know some of the specifics in this bill, like the expansion, just to pick one set, of Medicare to dental, vision, things like that, but you're not sure if things like universal child care are in it, which leads me to conclude that maybe those are the ones that are hanging by a thread. Is that an unfair analysis from a couple hundred miles away?
Well, look, I think the 3.5 trillion number really does accommodate so much of what the president put forth in the American Families Plan. And certainly it's great to see the expansion of Medicare, as well as the expansion of the ACA and those subsidies so that we expand and close the Medicaid gap as well. I mean, those are all priorities that, Democrats have been fighting for and the president has, sort of put forth in his plan. So, now we have to turn this into legislative text, just like we have to do the hard infrastructure plan, the bipartisan deal, to see, what's going to make it in. But, I'm elated with the fact that we're talking about investments at this scale because, for once, we're seeing the effects of more women, for example, in Congress, because we're talking about how do we get more women into the workforce? How do we set the conditions so that more women can participate in our economy? And these are the right conversations for us to be having as we emerge from the pandemic.
Congresswoman, a couple of weeks ago, the Supreme Court said college athletes could be compensated with education-related things. You and Senator Chris Murphy, from what I understand from Connecticut, will take it a giant leap further in something called the College Athletes Economic Freedom Act, giving college athletes the right to unionize and to sell their NILs. I can never remember names, images, and likenesses.
That's right.
As much of an advance as that is, wouldn't that only help the most elite of college athletes? You were a volleyball player at Georgetown. Would it have helped you?
Absolutely, it would have been. I mean, this is an issue that hits especially close to home for me because it's through my experience as a Division I athlete that I became all too familiar with the NCAA's business model that really does capitalize on some of our young athletes' most productive years. And I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. It was because of a volleyball scholarship that I was able to go. But college athletes sacrifice so much of their time and their opportunity to play competitively and balance that with school. You know, when I played volleyball at Georgetown, I couldn't even coach a summer camp for high school girls back home because according to the NCAA, it jeopardized my amateur status. Now, we know that amateurism is a thing of the past, but it's been used to build a multi-billion-dollar NCAA that's really tilted towards executives and coaches on the backs of hardworking, typically poor college students. And I think that's ridiculous. I'm so happy to see that that's finally changing. It's changing for the better. But we do need federal action to guarantee
But
that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to be clear because you're telling me something I didn't know. I think you went to college at Georgetown the same time at people like Mutombo and Iverson. I think I'm right about that. I know they'd benefit, but you're telling me that someone like you, and with all due respect, you were not a household name when you were playing volleyball at Georgetown, you would be able to earn outside income under your legislation, essentially because you were that kind of athlete that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do under current NCAA rules. Is that right?
You bet. And I think we've seen that just in the last 3 weeks since the Supreme Court decision. We've seen this critics' argument that women will be left out, just thrown out the window. Some of the largest deals we've seen already have been for female athletes, and that in turn is increasing their exposure. So I think this is going to have incredible benefits for women athletes themselves, for the sports that they play, but it's also invaluable for the next generation of athletes, young girls like my daughters who are seeing women athletes as leaders in their sport. Maybe it's on social media, maybe it's in viral videos of great plays being made, and they can really look up to them. So I think it's going to help women overall. And look, my hope is that we see even more engagement and promotion of the women's basketball tournament or the softball tourney, more so than we did in this record-breaking year.
Hopefully next NCAA they can get more than a couple of weights bought at Target. You know, Congresswoman, on voting rights, which matters a lot to a lot of people, the Texas Democrats in the legislature have done their part. They left the state. Here's Mitch McConnell's very respectful response to their move.
State legislators from Texas decided to grab some beer, hop on a private plane, and flee the state in what they are pretending is some great moral crusade. Once again, this outrage is completely phony.
Maybe you should have mentioned Ted Cruz going to Cancun. The House has done its share, too. Everybody watching this show, though, knows this does not become law. This does not protect the right to vote in this country unless Democrats decide to dump the filibuster, at least for this bill. Joe Biden seems reluctant, but is it not fair to say that if this doesn't become law, the Democrats should be held accountable? They don't need one single Republican vote to put this on Joe Biden's desk. If it fails, shouldn't voters hold members of your party accountable?
Well, look, I think it starts right now with Republican state legislatures and Republicans in Washington, frankly. This is nothing short of voter suppression. And what's most alarming is it's all based on a lie, and not just any lie, but, the big lie, the same one that led to an attack on our Capitol earlier this year in an attempt to overturn the presidential election. But you raise a great question. I mean, look, what's happening with these voting suppression tactics in Republican-led states is exactly why momentum is building to eliminate the filibuster. I mean, if the choice is between securing the future of our democracy for the American people and preserving a parliamentary rule that frankly has lost its utility in the Senate, I'm going to choose the future of our democracy all day long. And it's past time for others to do the same.
But my math is right, correct? You don't need one Republican vote in the Senate to protect the voting rights of Americans in 50 states. Is that not correct?
Well, in order for us to, pass the Voting Rights Act and the People Act, and in order for us to change so yes, we would need to at a minimum reform the filibuster, and that would require a change to the Senate rules package. And yes, we need to get that vote
Which the
through.
Democrats could do themselves. You know, before you go, I may have done this to you last time you're here, so my apologies. But when I look at Congress from afar, and I think I'm not alone, I wrote down a couple of notes. Every Republican, as people know, voted against the Biden COVID relief package. Every Republican will likely vote against expanding that Medicare coverage or providing some remedy for this climate change that is causing the West to burn and the East to drown in this thing. You work with people who think a deadly attack on the Capitol never happened, and who at the same time support a deranged former president's arguments that he won an election that he lost by millions of votes. How is democracy not irretrievably broken, Congresswoman?
Well, I think the power still sits with the people, Jim. And Congress definitely isn't winning any awards right now for best place to work. That's for sure. It's a tough place because we've got too many people in the Republican Party who have they've lost their way, frankly. But I think that's why voting is so important. That's why the president calls it the voting suppression tactics anyway, an existential threat to our democracy. And I think that this is where we all have to band together to preserve our democracy. It's fragile unless we're all participating. And but it is true, and I hope the American people know. I mean, I tour around my district all the time, touting the benefits from the American Rescue Plan, which didn't get any Republican votes. I mean, this is money in people's pockets, shots in people's arms. The reason why we're in such a great position today is because of the American Rescue Plan, and it'll be up for voters to decide next year in 2022 who they want to put their faith in terms of moving our country forward.
I love how Republicans who voted against the American Rescue Plan went home and bragged to their constituents about what they got for them. Congresswoman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for your time. Stay safe.
Thank you, Jim. You too.